For us, what's most important is to work hard at creating a more just, fair, equitable world and a planet that we can inhabit for future generations. We're also very keen that we should promote greater global collaboration and not division. As Africa, we have been victims of divisions and competition among powerful countries. We suffered the consequences in the context of the so-called Cold War. This competition for developing countries' support continues today. We'd like to see a different world. That's why I spoke yesterday about partnerships for development, so that we relate to each other differently, not relate to each other on the basis of, you're my friend because you accept everything that I want you to, you're my enemy because you don't agree with everything I want you to. We have to deal with each other in a very different way. We use concepts very easily, but actually we don't often mean them. So we say the UN Charter has sovereign equality for all states, but we don't regard each other as sovereign or equal. We don't regard nations under duress as sovereign or equal. And I think the world is at fault for this, and it is something we must address. So when, as the continent, we are referring to a view that we believe international law is utilized differently according to which country it is, our colleagues have to understand this concern. And it doesn't mean we're not concerned about those being killed in Ukraine or those being killed in Palestine. We're concerned about all deaths, but we must treat all equally, and we don't. This is our belief and our observation. So I think part of forming true friendships is to be honest with each other as well. Because when you are, then you speak on a basis where we each understand the perspectives we come from. There has been huge tolerance of the harm that has been visited upon Palestinian people. Huge tolerance by the world. No other part of the world would we accept such treatment. I can give you an example of South Africa after apartheid. If black South Africans had gone around murdering their fellow citizens who'd previously oppressed them, the world would never have stood by and watched. So unfortunately, we do react on the basis of who is on which side. And I think this issue of being equal in our responses is a huge challenge for all of us. I also would finally want to say that what we've done as the international community is together, in the context of the United Nations, we have framed conventions and protocol which together frame what we call international law. And that is the instrument that determines whether we're acting in terms of agreed prescripts or we are breaching them. We don't accept this new notion of rules-based international order, because we keep asking ourselves, are there rules outside the conventions, outside the protocol? We have international human rights law, international humanitarian law. All of these instruments form international law, and that is what should guide our interactions. There are no football rules or rugby rules. We have international law, and this is what I think we should be talking about and encouraging all of us to respect that. On international financial architecture, our greatest concern as the developing world are the increased debt vulnerabilities in some low-income countries as well as emerging economies. I don't think we can accept that Egypt, Kenya, South Africa should be neglected when we address the issues of debt. because as emerging economies, we want to keep them viable in order to play a critical role on the African continent. So while we'd like the debt vulnerabilities of low-income countries to be addressed, we believe we must not neglect middle-income countries either. We also believe that more innovative instruments need to be created, a greater role for developing countries in international development finance institutions. We believe the G20 Common Framework provides a very useful framework that all of us should look at. We think the process that was followed with respect to the debt relief discussions for Ethiopia, which we thought were run very well in allowing consultation on a very equitable case-by-case basis, is a good model for all of us to look at. On UN reform, yes, Security Council representation, but not just Africa. We're not selfish as Africa. It's ridiculous that India is not regarded as a permanent member of the Security Council, as the most populous nation in the world. So Asia is important for us as well. Latin America is important. So representation is broader than just Africa. And I think politically, we wouldn't only talk about ourselves as the continent. We also support very much review of this veto. We think it's been totally abused, it's been politicized, UN mechanisms have been politicized, and all of that also has to be curbed. Finally, I also believe that we need to encourage, in the context of the Summit of the Future, that the L69 must develop a text on UN reform, and that we need to move to text-based negotiations. We've been talking for over 11 years. It's just too long. We now need concrete discussions on proposals. Thank you very much, Chairperson.